Imagine waking up, turning the tap, and nothing comes out. Not a drop. The streets outside are boiling under 50-degree heat. Children are crying for water, and families are filling plastic jugs from trucks that may never come back. This isn't a dystopian film. It's happening right now in Iran. And what started as a crisis of thirst has already triggered protests, bloodshed, and whispers of a future where millions may have no choice but to abandon their homes. For 7 straight nights, Iranians have marched through the streets chanting the same words: "We are thirsty." Security forces responded the way they always do. With tear gas, with live rounds, with internet blackouts. At least 3 people are dead, dozens more are wounded. The government insists it has the crisis under control, but the truth is impossible to hide. Iran is running out of water. And when a nation runs out of water, it runs out of time. Iran has survived sanctions. It has survived sabotage. It has survived uprisings and wars. But drought, corruption, and climate change are proving far deadlier than any foreign enemy. Water levels in major reservoirs have dropped more than 15 meters in just a single year. Tehran's main dam may not last the month. In August, an unexpected failure cut off drinking water to 370,000 people in Kerman. Families waited in vain, not knowing when or if clean water would return. Instead of fixing the shortages, authorities cracked down on anyone who dared talk about them. 27 of Iran's 31 provinces lost internet access entirely. 4 were left with only partial connections. Millions now endure blackouts that last 6 to 12 hours each day. In some towns, the blackout never ends. No power, no connection, no water. And yet, Iran wasn't always this desperate. Just 10 years ago, rivers kept farmland alive. Dams generated power and wetlands stretched for miles. The Karun River once flowed strong enough to carry boats. Lake Urmia was the largest saltwater lake in the Middle East. The Hamoun wetlands on the Afghan border ranked among the largest in the world. Today, they're gone. Dust bowls where life used to thrive. Nature didn't just dry up overnight. Iran's leaders drained the system long before the drought arrived. For decades, rulers obsessed over grand projects, building dams, diverting rivers, and promising to turn deserts into farmland. They weren't solving problems. They were building monuments. Iran receives only 250 millimeters of rainfall each year, a third of the global average. Careful management should have been priority number 1. Instead, under the Shah in the 1960s and 1970s, Iran looked to America's mega projects for inspiration. The Hoover Dam, the Tennessee Valley Authority, symbols of progress. He even hired U.S. engineers to redesign Kyrgyzstan's water network. Soon, concrete dams rose everywhere, touted as marvels of modernity. But when the Shah fell in 1979, the new Islamic Republic embraced the exact same dream. From the 1980s through the 2000s, Iran became the 3rd largest dam-building nation on Earth, behind only China and Japan. More than 600 dams were built. During President Rafsanjani's era, one was finished every 45 days. That obsession was seen as progress. In reality, it was suicide. Iran's rivers aren't endless streams like in Europe or North America. They are seasonal, fragile, and scarce. Blocking them didn't create abundance. It created collapse. Wetlands dried up. Aquifers failed to recharge. Farmers downstream were left with nothing but cracked fields. Lake Urmia shrank to less than 5% of its former size. One dam, built on a salt plain, turned a freshwater river into a pool of brine. The very projects meant to save Iran's water ended up destroying it. Behind the concrete was corruption. The Revolutionary Guard's construction arm, Khatam al-Anbiya, collected billions in contracts. Environmental studies were ignored. Records vanished. Researchers later found hundreds of dams had no proper documentation at all. No costs listed, no impact reports, sometimes not even coordinates. It was progress on paper, profit in reality, and disaster on the ground. By the early 2000s, the disaster was undeniable. In 2013, President Hassan Rouhani halted new dam construction. Experts now say as many as 500 existing dams may need to be dismantled just to restore balance. Imagine that, dismantling half a century of progress just to keep the country alive. But dams are only half the story. Agriculture is the other half, and it may be the bigger monster. Nearly 90% of Iran's water goes to farming, but most of it is wasted. Ancient flood irrigation methods lose 2/3 of the water before crops can use it. Open canals leak another 10 to 15%. Even when the water reaches the fields, it often goes to the wrong crops. For decades, officials pushed farmers to grow rice, wheat, and even watermelons in desert provinces. A single kilogram of watermelon requires 170 liters of water. In Sistan and Isfahan, regions that barely see 2 inches of rain, farmers watched their soil turn white with salt. Crops withered, aquifers collapsed, and livelihoods vanished. For years, diesel pumps covered up the crisis, pulling groundwater from deep aquifers. But in less than 50 years, Iran drained 70% of its reserves. It took nature thousands of years to fill those aquifers. Iran emptied them in one generation, and when aquifers collapse, the land collapses with them. Land subsidence, so at the slow sinking of the ground itself, is tearing Iran apart. Around Tehran, the earth drops 25 to 30 centimeters every year. Buildings crack, roads buckle, bridges tilt. Farmers' fields split into giant fissures. The country is literally sinking under its own weight. And over all of this hangs climate change. Iran is heating up twice as fast as the global average. Summers are longer, hotter, and deadlier. In 2017, Ahvaz recorded 53.7 degrees Celsius, 129 Fahrenheit, one of the hottest temperatures ever measured on Earth. At those extremes, reservoirs evaporate, soil turns to stone, crops demand impossible amounts of water, and people retreat indoors just to survive. But when they go inside, dust follows. As lakes and wetlands vanish, dust storms rise. Zabul once earned the grim title of most polluted city on Earth from the World Health Organization. For 4 months each year, sand and dust storms choke entire provinces. Hospitals overflow with cases of asthma, lung infections, and respiratory disease. Families barricade their homes, but the dust seeps through cracks, coating every surface. The storms last so long that life itself feels suspended. And the government's response? Masks, curfews, and prayers. You can't pray rain into dry rivers. By 2021, patience was gone. Khuzestan boiled under 50-degree heat with no water in its taps. Protests erupted. At first, the chants were simple: "We are thirsty." But desperation quickly turned to fury. Within days, crowds shouted, "Down with the Islamic Republic!" Security forces opened fire. Dozens were killed or wounded. Blood spilled over thirst. That same year in Isfahan, farmers camped along the dried-up riverbed of the Zayandeh Rud, demanding the return of their stolen water. Thousands joined them. At first it felt like a peaceful gathering, almost like a festival. But as the crowd grew, the regime lost patience. Riot police burned tents, swung batons, and fired birdshot into the crowds. Dozens of farmers were left blinded or scarred for life. Once again, protests were silenced, but the anger? That only deepened. And while Iranians fight their own government for water, their neighbors are fighting them. To the east, Afghanistan controls the Helmand River, lifeline for Iran's Sistan province. A treaty signed in 1973 guaranteed Iran a share, but decades of war left it unenforced. Today, the Taliban are building dams upstream. Iran accuses them of stealing water. Afghanistan says it simply doesn't exist to share. In 2023, the dispute turned deadly. Soldiers exchanged fire. 2 Iranians and 1 Taliban fighter were killed. People killed each other over water. To the west, Iran is guilty of the same. By damming rivers that flow into Iraq, Iran has strangled its neighbor's lifeline. In 2018, Basra's water turned so salty that tens of thousands were hospitalized. Iraq accused Iran of choking the rivers. Iran denied it. But for the people downstream, the results are the same: thirst, disease, and desperation. Water has become a weapon, and in the Middle East, it's a weapon just as deadly as any bomb. Desperation breeds desperate solutions. Iran is now rushing to build desalination plants, pumping seawater from the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman into its central deserts. Billions are being spent on pipelines and pumps, but desalination plants are outrageously expensive, energy-hungry, and leave behind toxic brine that poisons the sea. Some cost $400 million a year just to operate. Even if they succeed, desalination won't refill collapsed aquifers or restore dried lakes. Experts warn many reserves may never recover. Climate models show Iran will only get hotter, only drier. Former Environment Minister Isa Kalantari once warned that without drastic change, 50 million Iranians, 70% of the population, may be forced to migrate. Entire villages have already emptied. Families are abandoning their cracked farmland, heading to the edges of Tehran, Mashhad, Isfahan. But those cities are already running out of water themselves. Where will tens of millions go when every city is thirsty? Where does a nation go when its land itself is turning to dust? Iran's water crisis isn't just a drought. It is the direct result of human choices. Decades of corruption, vanity projects, and reckless planning, all accelerated by the brutal math of climate change. And now, the countdown has begun. If Iran can reverse its course, it might become a model of survival in a warming world. But if it cannot, the world will watch as an ancient civilization crumbles. Not because of war, not because of sanctions, but because its most basic resource has vanished. When the water runs out, nothing else matters.